Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Everstage's Go to Master Show, Season 3. We converse with RevOps and GTM leaders from some of the most successful companies today and learn from their unique stories. Joining us today is Jeremy Whiteman, Senior Director, Sales Operations and Commercial Excellence at Resideo. Jeremy, thank you for joining us. Could you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Abby. Great to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, happy to share some background here to get us started. Like you said, my current role is senior director, sales operations and commercial excellence, and that means that I get the opportunity to lead about 6 different functions across the sales ops space for us. That means sales comp, sales analytics, sales enablement, sales support, CRM, and then what we kind of call generically customer programs. So things like rebate and loyalty programs, some different areas there. So it's a wide number of disciplines within sales ops, but that's what I do currently. I'm sure we'll dive into some of that over the next half hour or so. Previous to that, I was in different sales operations roles, a lot of manufacturing, um, some sales finance roles. And then I think what might be relevant and interesting, AB, is, kind of my early career, which included some customer care, some inside sales roles, some outside sales roles. And the reason I bring those up is I think that early career experience in outside sales, inside sales, customer care, finance has really helped enable me as a sales operations leader. Working with salespeople out in the field and driving to a number every month, every quarter, every year, having carried a bag at one time, I can relate better to sales. I understand sales. I understand that pressure of always having to drive to a number. Having been in customer care for a while and having managed a customer care function, I understand that side of the business as well. Especially sales finance and being in finance too, and understanding, well, how to read the P&L and L and what are our leaders looking for? What should we care about? So, I bounced around a little bit early on in my career, which at first I thought was maybe a detriment. But looking back now where I'm at, I'm really grateful that I had that journey before I landed in the sales operations space and started being part of the go to market team.
Six different functions. I'm hoping we'll dive into most of them as well in this conversation. It's pretty diverse, and you also mentioned how it's kind of helping at this point of time. Which experiences have most shaped how you think about building durable, high performing sales operations today?
A great question. I think the very recent experience that we've all been through, which I guess I can just sum up as uncontrollable market dynamics. Right? You think of COVID-19, you think of supply chain disruptions, geopolitical changes, whether that manifests itself in tariff policies or other regulations, right? All of these changes and uncontrollable market dynamics have led to me really focusing on agility as one of the core competencies for my team. So, for us, agility that manifests itself in anything from process to documentation to tools to our own operating rhythm to our operating systems, our management systems. Not only do we have these massive global factors that I just talked through, but then also locally, the organization that I'm in, we've had a lot of different C-suite, different leadership over the last 4 or 5 years. So having agility as one of our core competencies is letting us navigate this, right? And for us, that's like I said, anything from documentation and processes to things very locally like comp plans. If we look at the recent tariff activity in the U.S. and the current administration's policy and how that's changed so much, those tariffs can drive price increases, which could inflate or deflate a sales rep's performance, depending on which side of the coin they're on. And so we've had to build in the agility in our comp plans and in our comp language and in our incentive programs to be able to react swiftly. So it's both fair to the individual, to the rep who's on a variable comp program, as well as fair to the organization. So I think, one of the biggest experiences has been just this recent uncontrollable market dynamics. Um, I think a second part of my experience that's really shaped the way I try to build my teams is trying to have a real end state goal in mind for when my sales ops function or any sales ops function is fully matured, right? It's easy to come in an organization. It's easy to do a current state assessment and go, whoa, I need to fix this. I need to fix that. I need to fix this. And you end up in a very reactive state, which is good, right? Sometimes the point where you're at in your maturity continuum, you need to be reactive. You need to fix holes. You need to close gaps. You need to um, shore up some basic fundamental parts of your sales operations function. But having this end state goal of, hey, when we're done, when we're mature, when I've got this function performing at the level that I want, it's going to look like this. Having that identified, having that, I mean, I literally have done this with my team where I will print our vision statements, I will laminate them, and I will give them to them. Put this in your backpack, put this in your briefcase. I want you to carry this every day. Um, so having that end state in mind has really shaped the way that I build my teams. I go back a couple years, a couple different organizations, a couple different times in my sales ops journey. I've walked into or inherited a function that was way on the left of the maturity continuum. And we spent all this time just fixing fundamentals and building programs and putting in logic, putting in controls. And if you just focus on that, you lose the opportunity to also be proactive and say, okay, here's all the things that I'm fixing. However, in a parallel work stream, I also need to make sure that I'm driving towards what I want this function to be. So I think that's one of the most recent experiences that really shaped the way we build our teams.
You mentioned about changes, right? From tariffs to the local changes, the changes that happen within the company, change becomes the only constant. Buyers and buying cycles are also changing. How are you equipping sellers with the skills, content, and tools they actually use? And how do you measure impact? Because measuring impact on tools is the hardest part on productivity and revenue quality.
Yeah, absolutely. I constantly task my team with pushing to bring in new content, to bring in new tools, to scan the horizons. I mean, I see it as our one of our roles as a sales operations function, right? Is we should be pushing and we should be bringing into the team, to the go-to-market teams. Have you heard of this tool? Have you seen the benefit that this brings? Have we tried this process? Have we tried this selling methodology? So for us, that's something that we could and should be doing all the time, right? I task my team with that. Um, and to your point, right, change is a concept. Think of how many things have changed in that cycle, from just the buyer's journey, and how that's changed. We as a consumer, right, even as a sales operations function, when I'm looking at different tools, I'm looking at different things that I can bring in. We can be so much more informed before we ever engage a sales rep than we could before. I mean, we have platforms like this. There's podcasts that I can go out and listen to and understand better about the SPM or ICM space. There's podcasts out there where I can understand different sales methodologies before I ever pitch one to bring in. So, I think the buyer's behavior has changed so much that they can and should be way more informed. So I really see how much that's changed our sellers' role when they're engaging with customers. They probably are 90% of the way there when they used to only be 10% of the way there. And then the salesperson was bringing them along. Now they're just trying to help them form that final 10%. The other thing that's changed a lot is what we just simply call the concept of try before you buy, or the proof of concept. For me, I will go kicking and screaming into signing an enterprise-wide licensing agreement or a 3-year software agreement before I've done a proof of concept. Give me 10 licenses for 6 months. Let me try it with a very small cost investment, with a very small time, effort, and energy investment. So I think that's changed. I think more and more companies are willing to let you have a proof of concept deployment. They want to show the value before you go all in. So I think that's changed a lot. Um, we've seen ROI models change quite a bit. What used to be a very simple, hey, if we could provide you with a 1% revenue lift attributed to X change, are you willing to move forward? Right? That was kind of the old that we saw all the time. And now I see ROI models that are way more mature. For example, working with a vendor recently on a software that we were evaluating, the ROI input process call alone was about an hour long. How much time do your reps spend doing this activity? How much time do your reps spend doing that activity? Do your reps ever get stuck in the process here? Like, we really went through a deep kind of day in the life and a workflow evaluation just as inputs to an ROI model. So I think the ROI model, the ROI models have matured a lot. Um, we engage our selling team in our evaluation process a lot more than we used to. I think if you go back just a few years, even sales operations was tasked with bringing different things to the go-to-market teams, and the go-to-market teams were informed at the very end. Hey, we've bought this. We've worked on deploying it. It's about to go to production. Can you guys come be involved in a UAT? Where now we are so much earlier in the process in terms of engaging our go-to-market teams. We survey for needs, we listen to employee voice surveys, we get our sellers involved way earlier. And then, our evaluation process has changed too. We look at things like change management and user adoption strategies as part of the buying process. If I'm talking to a vendor, if I'm looking at a potential solution and we're not talking about what that user adoption curve will look like or what that change management strategy will be, like, we're missing something. And I go back again just a couple of years, like, we never had those conversations during the buying cycle. So I think that's another thing that have changed a lot. In terms of measuring productivity and measuring quality and measuring impact, it's we've deployed what I'll call a full circle model. So if our original ROI is bent on, I'll make it up here, seller efficiency. And if I can deploy a tool that's going to give a seller, say, 15% back in their day, in their week, we measure that a week out, a month after deployment, 6 months after deployment. We measure engagement. We look at how often that tool is being used. So I think it's interesting, right? A lot of things have changed in that cycle. And then in terms of measuring post production, post deployment, we really go full circle right back to that ROI and say, okay, this is what this tool was supposed to do. Are we doing it?
Doubling down on tools, with so many tools available, how do you evaluate, select, and simplify your stack so it integrates cleanly with CRM, avoids overlap, and delivers clear value to the field?
That's a tough one, right? There are so many tools on the marketplace right now. And I don't care if you're looking at ICM, SPM space, if you're looking at contact management, if you're looking at data dedupe. I mean, you can go out to the marketplace for just about every platform, and there are just hundreds and hundreds of tools. And without having that end state in mind, it's very easy to proliferate your tech stack. I always give the analogy when I'm working with leaders internally about the grocery shopping. So if you go grocery shopping without that list, without your meal plan, you're likely to just have a whole bunch of stuff thrown in the cart. And you can do that with tech stack too to support go to market. You go out and you look in the marketplace, there are tools that do good things. There are tools that can be helpful. But unless you've got that clear vision of, okay, this is a pain point for my go to market team that we need to solve. So I need a tool that does X. So I think, one of the ways we do it is having that end state or that end user goal in mind. We design and we look at UX as much as possible. If I've got something that doesn't plug into CRM, for example, for us, that means Salesforce. If I'm looking at something that doesn't plug into Salesforce, I've got to have a really strong and compelling reason why I should have yet another link for my sales team to go out to. If it can't be embedded, like, that's a tough, tough hill to climb for me. Um, and I think one other thing that we do when we're trying to avoid tech stack proliferation is we really look at an end-to-end approach for what a seller goes through in our org. So what I mean by that is when they start their month, when they start the quarter, when they start the year, when they start their processes with their customers, What are all those touch points? What are all the different things that they need to do? Whether it's, at the very front end, it's prospecting and it's campaign management, to maybe they're at the point where something tactical, like needing a sample and getting a sample of the hardware out to the customer, to documenting the journey as we go through in CRM. So all the way to close and then to post close, we look at that end to end approach when we're looking at our tools, when we're looking at different things that we want to bring in. It's got to fit in that end to end workflow. It's got to fit where they work. Again, I always give the really hard litmus test of, if I'm going to give them yet another link, it's got to be a really compelling reason why it's going to sit outside where they work today.
The grocery shop analogy was an interesting one. What principles guide you as you tune plans? We touched upon ICM on compensation plans for different roles and business priorities such as new park integrations or margin improvement, while keeping plans fair, simple, and adaptable year to year.
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge all the time. Um, we leverage a number of different guiding principles. I think one of the first ones is business alignment. And what I mean by that is, depending on the priority of the business or the business unit, the significance of that launch, that NPI, the significance of the need for margin improvement, or whatever the catalyst is that's driving the business, we need to make sure that we've got comp programs aligned, that we've got our initiatives aligned. That one of the greatest sins a sales operations function can commit is operating in a vacuum. So if we're tied into the business, then we can make sure that that's the most important thing. That's what we need to comp on, to incentivize on, to drive behaviors towards. So I think that's one of our core principles. Another one for us is, funny enough, I call it leave an exit clause. So if we've got, in your example, right, a new product coming out, and we might put a very lucrative or very rich comp plan on, we leave ourselves an out in our verbiage and our language that says we have the right to change this, right? I don't have a long history of selling this product into this market. It's brand new. My assumptions around cannibalization, my assumptions around take rate might be dramatically off. Despite whatever the product team has done, it's a new product in a new market, so I leave myself an out. So we have the right to change. Now, we always do it fairly. We do it in concert with HR, with sales. We don't just change at a whim, but we leave ourselves an out. Um, what else do we do? We also deploy a playbook when we want to create a culture of winning. Um, so you've got new plans, you've got new product, you've got margin improvement, right? We will take and deploy a playbook that's generic, that we then assimilate to whatever that initiative is. And I'll give you just a quick example from a new product introduction standpoint, right? One of the things that you talked about, we may deploy this playbook that's got a tip of the spear component, which, all right, who are our customer targets? What's our cannibalization target? What's the funnel look like? What does pre-launch look like? What are the campaigns that should be driving that? That playbook will have a component around the data. So do I have my data scientists lined up to do all the measurements to make sure we've got all the KPIs and the dashboards and everything ready to go, so I can see the pre-launch activity, at launch, post-launch. So that's part of that playbook. Um, and then we'll deploy another page on that playbook around what we call awards, right? So our SPIFFs, our bonus, here's the cash handout for the first seller to hit the unit target. Here's the cash handout for the first seller to hit their absolute dollar target. So, um, when we tune for different roles, different responsibilities, that's one of the things that we look at too. And I guess just a core one to add is communication, right? We spend a lot of time interacting with not only the go-to-market team, but the HR team, the legal team, right? We function as a central communication point to make sure that the entire business is aligned to this. And I'm not going to go, again, commit that sin of sales ops operating in a vacuum and standing up a program that isn't aligned to everybody else.
ops as the central communication point. I have a question on AI as well, Jeremy. Uh, where are you seeing practical wins? When I say practical wins, there's a lot of noise around AI. Where do you see practical wins from AI, such as forecasting, content assistance, or plan modeling? And what guardrails ensure adoption, data quality, and accountability?
Yeah. Really interesting. I think everybody's focused on AI right now and how can it improve and how can it make them more efficient. And um, I'm really driving my team to look at it. In our operating reviews the last several months, I've brought in different books, different videos, different podcasts, different YouTube videos that I want my team to go watch, learn, and digest. Um, and some of the initial areas that we're exploring are around sales coaching. So there's some really good digital AI sales coaching tools out there. We go back to the old model of, hey, 2, 3 times a year, we're going to bring all the salespeople into a room. We're going to have a facilitator. We might do some role playing. That's high expense. You got travel expense. You've got facilitation expense. That is really sunsetting. And we're looking at digital video coaching, whether it's on the laptop, whether it's on the phone. So that's one area we're exploring and looking at and having some early wins on. Data mining is another one for us that we're exploring. One of my remits, as we talked about earlier, is that sales analytics and insights group. And where that used to look like was fingers on keyboards and fingers on a mouse. And all right, pull down the data. Let's see what holes can you find in this? What opportunities can you find in this? Now we can feed a lot of that stuff into AI and say, hey, I'm looking for a trend that would identify the following, and AI can spit that back to us. And then a third area that we're looking at across, or how do you leverage AI is efficiency. So when I look at my sellers, and one of our goals as a sales operations function is to make them more efficient. We want to enable them, we want to empower them, we want to educate them, but of course we want to make them more efficient. So if there are AI tools that I can bring to the sales team that are going to make them more efficient, whether that's day-to-day tactical functions like capturing notes in the CRM, and is there a better way to do that? Or whether that's scanning the market and feeding them relevant information to their local market, to their local geography, then great. I want to look at that tool. I want to plug that in and get that to them. So those are some of the areas we're exploring. I love that you said, hey, what are the guardrails? Because that's really important, right? We have been talking about this internally as an organization, and I think a lot of companies are struggling to put this out there. Some of the big engines widely known, the chat GPTs of the world, we certainly don't want our company data, anything that's proprietary, anything that's sensitive, that's customer data, et cetera. We don't want anybody taking that information and uploading it to an external engine. So we have ones that are behind the firewall for us. And so that's what has to be used. Unless it's a generic inquiry, it's got to be something that's inside our four walls. So we talk about that as a team. We talk about how to validate and test what AI is giving you back, so we avoid hallucinations. And the last thing that we want is somebody to present a finding. Let's say it's a customer trend, and here's an opportunity to sell X, Y, and Z because they have low stock performance. Well, hold on. We gather that inventory data from that partner. Let's go test that over the last couple months. Let's go do some regression analysis. And does that theory hold? So we talk about using only the tools that are inside of our firewall. We talk about testing what you get back from AI. And then one of the other guiding principles that we use a lot is make sure that you are generating the content and you are leveraging AI to clean it up, to make it more efficient, to make it better worded. We don't want AI just generating everything. We want to be using it
Right.
as a tool to make us more efficient. So, and it's evolving, right? What I've said to my team probably 3 months ago has changed just in the last 90 days. The more we are learning as a function about how we can use it, the more I'm learning to podcasts like this and hearing how others are using it. We are evolving our AI strategy constantly.
You did mention about the resources, books, podcasts that you share with your teams. Are there any specific ones that you would recommend for someone looking to scale their career in the sales operations space?
Yeah, great question. The operations podcast with Sean Lane is one that I've listened to over the years. He used to be with Drift. I'm not sure where he's at now, but the operations podcast is a good one. Um, and I encourage my team, read, and read. Every month in my team meeting, we have a formal team operating review. Every month I have a slide in there. What are you reading? And I put the titles up for whatever I've read over the last month. And, it doesn't necessarily have to just be operations focused. And I'll give you an example. Last month, I read 2 books. I read Apple in China. Patrick McGee is the author there, and then Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams. And just the general business lessons that you can get, the manufacturing lessons that you can get from those, well, from Apple in China for sure, and then Careless and People, the business lessons, they're amazing. So podcasts, absolutely, but read, and I encourage you to talk about it with your teams. What are you reading? What have you found good lately? Our CEO here does the same thing. He's often giving out reading assignments, and he does our town halls, and he says, "Here's what I've read lately." So I just, different podcasts, different books. I can't encourage it enough to continually learn.
3 key pieces of advice you would like to share with our listeners who aspire to excel in the field of sales operations?
Couple things, if you were trying to excel your career in sales ops, I'd say a couple things. I'd say one is get to know your company's go-to-market leaders, right? Build those relationships. The more you can understand sales management, sales leadership, chief revenue officer, those roles, what they do, what they care about, and what they're trying to drive in the go-to-market organization, the better you will be at sales operations and supporting that function. So I'd say build those relationships. Um, the second one is get to know your company's product, your offering, your value, your software, whatever it is that your company brings to market. If you can understand your product and the value proposition and the differentiation between you and the competitor, you're going to understand conversations that happen around that go to market table about different market dynamics, about different customers, about different competitors. So you think, well, I'm a sales ops person. I need to know CRM. I need to know comp. I need to know these things. But you should also really have a working knowledge of your own products. So the second thing I'd say, and then I guess the last thing kind of ties to what we just talked about, which is never stop learning. So congrats, right? You've got that first sales ops analyst role. You want to become a senior. You want to become a senior advanced. You want to get on the tool side of it. There are so many avenues out there for you to learn, whether it's podcasts like this, whether it's books, whether it's YouTube videos. When I see and I look at my team leaning into their continual development, even at 20, 25 years into your career, it's fantastic. So if you want to grow, if you want to aspire to reach the next level, don't stop learning. And that's stuff that you've got to do on your own, probably outside of the business hours. But take your commute time, listen to this podcast. Take your weekends, read a book, set a goal, do one a month. So just never stop learning.
Never stop learning. Well, that brings us to the end of this insightful episode of Go to Masters. Big thanks to Jeremy for sharing his experiences and valuable insights. Remember, you can tune in every week to learn more from game changers driving hypergrowth companies across the globe. Go to Masters is brought to you by Everstage, your trusted partner for transforming the way businesses handle sales commissions. I'm your host, signing off.